We've the second and final part of the Flower Show tonight from 7:30. Now though, Rob McLaughlin and Lucy Meacock with Granada Reports.
Welcome to Granada Reports.
Coming up tonight,
childhood cancer on the increase. We have the latest.
First island, now Norway, adds its opposition to nuclear reprocessing its Sellafield.
Coughs and sneezes spread diseases, why it's important to be prepared over the festive season.
And red noses all round. Find out why this horse is hoofing about for Christmas.
Good evening. First tonight, a frightening rise in childhood cancers. Scientists at Manchester University say more children are suffering from brain tumours and leukemia than ever before.
And the experts are admitting they don't really know what's causing the increase. In a moment, we'll be talking to one of those experts, but first, this report tonight from Emma Murphy.
For the families with children on Alder Hayes Cancer Ward, the increasing incidence of the disease is an all-too-real issue. Today's research from Manchester University has studied the occurrence of childhood cancer across the northwest. It shows a 33% increase in leukemia cases and 36% more brain tumours than in the 1950s. Now a review of clusters of the illness will be looked into to discover any obvious cause. Research is now underway to establish why childhood cancers are on the rise. However, the suspicion is that radioactivity, chemical pollution and possibly diet all play their part.
We think that it must be something to do with environmental factors or changes in lifestyle, infections, but something that's outside of the children, if you like, as opposed to genetic factors.
14-year-old Patrick Boxwell from the Wirral was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease in August. He's one of the 1,500 children that develop cancer every year.
You feel different. I hate feeling different, and I do feel very different, simply because people look at you in a different way. And although sometimes I feel completely normal, I often feel very, very tired, and it's completely changed my life.
I think all of us have fears about the environment we live in these days and what effect this is having on our children.
To cope with the increasing numbers, Alder Hayes Rocking Horse Appeal is raising money for the UK's first integrated cancer unit for children. With help from donors like the Teenage Cancer Trust, they aim to craft their care to young people of all ages. Research has shown teenagers being treated with their peers rather than on a general or children's ward have a 15% greater chance of survival. The picture is also improving for other children.
Childhood leukemias, when the registry started in the 1950s, was 100% fatal. All children with leukemia died. Whereas now, children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, more than 75% of children are cured.
The challenge for the experts now is to establish a cause in the hope of stemming such an increase.
Well, joining us live from London, Dr. Leslie Walker from the Cancer Research Campaign. First of all, just how significant are these findings?
Well, there's no doubt that the results are significant. It would be good to have data right across the country because this data was gathered in the North West region by the Manchester Children's Tumour Registry. But there's no doubt that they have recorded a significant increase, particularly in leukemia and brain cancer.
Now, so these findings are not as a result of improved treatment and diagnosis?
Well, there's been a relative success story in treatment in children's cancer, so, that's just something that's getting better and better. But this is different. This is about the numbers of new cases. And so, what we're now concerned to do is to develop some hypotheses and do some research and try and find out what the causes of these increases are.
I mean, what sort of things are we talking about?
Well, in the case of leukemia, we have strong belief now, because lots of data points in that direction, that actually it's a rare consequence of a common infection. Hodgkin's disease may well be the glandular fever virus, for example. But in brain cancer, I think we have much less of an idea. So environmental factors are invoked, but, that could be, it could mean an infection, a virus, or it could be something else, even diet.
But a lot of parents are going to be very worried about these findings. And what can you do to protect your children when you're not quite sure where the risks are coming from?
Well, I think actually there's very little that you can do, but I would say two things, and it's very important to bear this in mind. I mean, number one, childhood cancer is rare. I mean, it's rare compared to adult cancers. So, you know, the chances of a child getting cancer is something like 1 in 2,000. So, you know,
it's greater now than it was.
That's absolutely true, but I mean, there's probably, you know, a much greater risk of you know, hazards on the road and so on. So, I think it's important that, you know, that we get that risk in perspective. Secondly, I think, you know, because we don't know enough about the causes, it's not possible to, you know, take specific action. But one of the things is, you know, for heaven's sake, if there are any abnormal signs and symptoms, you know, do report them to the doctor early, because as with all cancers, it's important to get treatment as soon as possible.
So what sort of signs should you be looking out for?
Well, I mean, there's a whole range of things, but you know, some you know, sort of flu symptoms that don't clear up might mean there's something wrong. You know, a tumour of the you know, the blood or something like that. You know, kind of aches and pains in long bones that don't go away. I mean, anything that persists and is unexplained definitely needs to be investigated, and probably it will be completely trivial. But, you know, it's just not worth, you know, it's not worth hanging on for a long time to see what happens.
Obviously, you want to catch these things as soon as possible. Dr. Leslie Walker, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Norway has joined Ireland in the fight for a total closure of the Sellafield nuclear site in Cumbria. Today, the Norwegian Minister for the Environment arrived at the plant for a tour, and he repeated his country's belief that the site's responsible for an increase in radioactivity in Norwegian waters. Rachel Bullock has this report.
The Irish government has found a new ally in its fight to get Sellafield closed down. Today, Norway's Environmental Minister, Børge Brende, visited the plant to reiterate his country's belief that it's responsible for the increase in radioactivity found in its waters. It's believed to be the result of a chemical discharge coming from the plant. This could have a devastating effect on Norway's crucial fishing industry, and the Norwegian government are now urging UK ministers to change how Sellafield disposes of its chemical products.
Mainly this is a political issue, but since the British government hasn't been too cooperative in finding a solution for storing and cleaning technetium-99, our foreign ministry is now going through also the legal sides, comparing ESPO, ASPAR conventions, because we're not listened to, because there are alternatives to polluting the North Sea.
Sellafield has been at the centre of controversy recently as the date scheduled to switch on the new MOX facility draws ever nearer. The NFL have faced several court battles aimed at preventing the plant from opening, but have managed to defeat them all. Today they work to reassure Norway that all chemicals released into the environment are safe.
We believe that all the evidence shows that the consequences of those discharges are negligible, both on the environment and on humans, resulting from the interaction with the environment. So yes, I would say that discharges are safe.
The first steps towards switching on the new MOX facility will be taken within the week.
Prison inspectors say parts of a Lancashire jail are uninhabitable, but despite the heavy criticism of some of the accommodation at Kirkham, inspectors found it generally to be thriving and purposeful. Emily Knowles reports.
Her Majesty's inspectors made an unannounced visit to the open prison at Kirkham earlier this year. The jail itself occupies the site of a former RAF base, and some of the buildings date back to the 1940s. It was these which inspectors found to be outdated and not suitable to house prisoners.
I don't think you would describe what you've seen today as unlivable. And beyond that, there is the fact that we now have secured finance to replace all that accommodation, and builders will be on site in about 3 weeks' time. By this time next year, it'll all be gone, the old accommodation.
Prisoners spend most of their time working on site, with timber and agriculture being the main industries. According to the report, education needs are often compromised by the jail's commercial activities. Inmates, however, appreciate the jobs they're given to do.
It's obviously rehabilitation. You know, the punishment is being in prison, of course, and as I said earlier on, being separated from your family. But it's a way of letting you reflect on what's gone wrong, why you're here in the first place, and an opportunity to hone skills that you mightn't have had before, you know, while you're doing your work.
The days have gone with a ball and chain and cracking rocks. I mean, we've got the education here. I think people are in prison to rehabilitate. They're not here to be sort of punished further. you're taking the freedom away.
To conclude, the report describes Kirkham as a thriving and purposeful establishment. Their work still needs to be done.
Paramedics on Merseyside are being issued with body armour to protect them against violent assaults from the public. 4 crew members will take part in the trial, which will run for 6 months from mid-January. Mersey Regional Ambulance is only the 2nd trust in the country to have used stab-proof vests. Health and safety chiefs say the move's a last resort following 45 attacks on staff in just 8 months.
An ambulance crew come on duty, they're there to serve their local community. They normally live in the local community. They can attend to an emergency call where someone has a genuine need, and because of maybe mindless people stood around the area, they become a target really. So we may get people throwing stones. We've had recent cases where ambulance windows have been smashed, bricks thrown at ambulance crews, at ambulance stations, and so therefore based on that, as an employer, we've got an obligation to look after the health, safety and welfare of our staff.
New and more radical measures are being called for to boost numbers of ethnic minorities in the police in the region. Since the disturbances in Burnley and Oldham, forces in the northwest have yet to attract significant numbers of black and Asian officers, as recommended in a report following the clashes. According to new Home Office figures, fewer than 2% of officers in Lancashire and 3% in Greater Manchester are from ethnic minorities. Police chiefs have responded by saying they'll exceed the recommended numbers during 2002.
The shopping giant Littlewoods has reported an increase in sales and profits, which could indicate a reverse in fortunes for the retailer. The Liverpool-based firm's announced a 4% increase in sales for the 6 months to the end of October. This compares to a £13 million loss for the same period last year. The company says the figures show that Littlewoods is now prospering.
Airbus has confirmed more than 200 workers have applied for voluntary redundancy at a threatened aerospace plant in North Wales. The Broughton site, which makes aircraft wings, has seen a 25% drop in orders since September the 11th. Airbus says up to 1,200 jobs are at risk unless cuts are made. Unions are also expected to accept shift changes, ending overtime, and the introduction of a 35-hour week. Farmers in the region are welcoming news that the government is allowing the resumption of livestock markets in the new year. Auction marts have been closed since February following the start of the foot-and-mouth crisis. New biosecurity measures were brought in to stop a repeat of the outbreak. Restrictions on animal movements across Britain will be eased to reduce some of the red tape currently facing farmers. The move has come as a much-needed boost to many in the industry.
The fact that we're going to be back in business is absolutely wonderful, and we're going to be able to sell cattle and sheep for human consumption through the market. We're going to be able to have an open pricing structure, and we're going to do what we do best, that's become the sorting house for the livestock industry. It's absolutely wonderful news. We don't need Christmas. Christmas has come early with this announcement.
Coming up, stand by for an epidemic, lotions and potions to beat coughs and colds. And when it's a horse, not a horse, when it's a reindeer, of course, all will be revealed. Yes, don't go away. Sport, and we have the world's best footballers and the best presenter, don't we, James?
I'm not sure about that, Lucy, but we can claim to have 2 of the best players on the planet after the handing out of Football World's annual gongs. It's certainly been a good week for Liverpool's Michael Owen. 22 last Friday. He's now the European Player of the Year. Here's Mick Chanham.
It's hard to believe that Michael Owen emerged as a professional footballer only 4 years ago. Yet in that time, he's not only provided us with one of the finest individual goals seen on the world stage, but he's also spearheaded Liverpool and England's re-emergence as a true force in the game once more. His European Player of the Year award will join the honours of last season's treble campaign, yet Owen himself has already deflected much of the praise towards Gerard Houllier and his Liverpool and England teammates. He's only the 6th British player to win the prestigious prize, yet Owen's ranking of 8th in the World Player of the Year poll seems bizarre, at the very least.
When the manager told me that I'd won it, it was an unbelievable feeling. The first thing I wanted to do was pick up a paper or anything that had a list of the winners, list of Liverpool players that have won it, English players, and when you see that, then your name amongst some of the great players in the world, it's unbelievable.
Well, last night's award could mark the start of sparkling 6 months for Michael Owen. With me here in the studio, Liverpool legend Phil Neal. And Phil, first in Europe and only 8th in the world. It's a strange thing, this competition idea, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but he's handled himself well. He's been boy wonder as a schoolboy and carried it all the way through to an international player of some repute.
We know how highly the Liverpool fans rate him. You hear him going on about all the time. I mean, as someone in the game, how highly do you rate Michael Owen?
Yes, we've got it. I think the best is yet to come. That's the thing with him, and I'm sure he'll have his eyes on the World Player of the Year as well. Actually, in maybe 3 or 4 years' time.
I'm looking at him there. He's got such a steady head on those shoulders, and he's got so much pressure as well. With Liverpool going for the Premiership and obviously England and the World Cup in the summer.
Yeah, I think that his family have helped him handle this very, very well. And as I say, you saw through that interview, he can handle himself very well, and he keeps his feet on the floor. He's sure he's got his ambitions, and I'm sure that includes being world renowned as well as European.
In the build-up to the World Cup, people are already saying we've got to have Michael Owen to have any chance. Is it as simple as that, do you think?
I think Liverpool miss him when he's out. I think probably England do too.
Yeah, the injury thing is the most important thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have seen a couple of injuries, and if you